everyone, and welcome to our webinar today featuring some of our leading experts. My name is Hala. I work at Fullscript. I'm an implementation specialist here at Fullscript. And joining me today is Alex and Yael. We are going to be talking about the power of genetic testing. So I'm just going to do some public service announcements before we get started. I just wanted to let everyone know that the question section is open for everyone. Please go ahead and type your questions in that section. We'll be addressing all questions towards the end of the webinar. So I'd like to do a warm introduction. Welcome, Yael. Yael blasted past Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours and kept on going on her relentless journey to master the emerging field of nutrigenetics. Yael has done it all, and we really mean that. She started out her life as a budding architect. My mom's an architect. And ended up as a world-renowned scientist. She is a force to be reckoned with in the genomics world and boldly leads the science team at 3x4 Genetics on the journey to build clinically useful products that are shaping the future of healthcare. Welcome, Yael. How are you?
Thanks, Hala. That's a hell of an introduction to live up to, but hopefully I can.
Absolutely, I have absolutely no doubt. And of course, with you today, Alex.
I'm the one who has to go second.
Oh, Alex, you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
I'm not the second.
Alex, we are great friends here at Fullscript. Alex is a practicing naturopathic doctor in Ottawa, Canada. He also serves as the medical director at Fullscript. He was my manager a couple of years ago when we introduced integrations at Fullscript, but now oversees, now oversees 20 members of our integrative medical advisory team. That produces educational resources for integrative practices and manages Fullscript's community development. And this is why we're having you speak here today. Alex is also the co-founder of an integrative physical therapy clinic and maintains a practice focused on pain management, performance, and stress resilience for athletes. And today he splits his professional time practicing as a clinician and working at Fullscript. We're very grateful for that. And developing innovative regenerative farming operation while chasing his son and occasionally running ultra marathons. Welcome, Alex.
You're at the whole thing. Thanks, Alex.
Please, Alex, I got like 3 lines and you got like 20 lines. Like you're the super figure, really.
Today, our experienced presenters will be talking to us about genetic testing, or the power of genetic testing. What is it? Why is it important? What is the 3x4 Genetics platform? And we're going to delve into the new integration with Fullscript. What does that mean to our attendees and our users today, and how we'll be streamlining your workflow moving forward? And with that, I am going to start by sharing my screen and giving it away to the presenters.
Thanks, Hala.
Wonderful. Thank you, Hala. Much appreciated. I wanted to start with a quick backstory here as we're loading up the slides that I remember distinctly the day that I was first introduced to 3x4 and eventually to Yael and her team. It was actually through Kyle, our CEO, Kyle Bratz, at Fullscript, and he had met Yael and her team at, it was IHS, I believe, and
That's right.
And they had gone through the test with him and done the interpretation, and he came to myself and our chief medical officer, Dr. Jeff Glad, with this interpretation and said, am I healthy or am I not? What's going to happen? and there's a running joke that we have with Kyle where we try to kind of get him running in the direction of thinking he's unhealthy before we bring him back and say you're just fine, because he's pretty darn healthy. He takes care of himself well. But that was our first exposure to 3x4, and we got this interpretation that he sent to us, and we said, whoa, what is this? What is this incredibly beautifully designed report with so much detail that really just blew what we knew about genetic testing, what we knew about the experience of genetic testing at the time out of the water. So that was a great way to first be introduced to 3x4, and then we had the pleasure of meeting you, Yael, and the rest of your team, and gradually developing a relationship here over time. So I'd like to kick off by asking you again, I know the answer to this, but I'd love for you to explain to the audience, why did you build 3x4? What are the gaps in this field that you noticed and that you felt so passionate about trying to solve when you built this company?
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, so I've been working in nutrigenomics for 21 years now, and most of the time was in building genetic tests for companies I was part of startups. Then I really found this disillusionment, which often happens to me, that we really weren't moving in a direction I was comfortable with, and that practitioners were really battling. Practitioners were reaching out to me saying, can you run workshops? Can you do a masterclass? Can you teach us how to use this information? So I actually stepped back from genetic testing and spent quite a few years building a company that teaches translational nutrigenomics to practitioners online. Loved that. Then set up a clinic that was a nutrigenomics clinic, only to kind of really work out whether what we were teaching actually works, which is often the problem with teaching. And it was incredibly successful, and we had really great results. But the problem we had is that we had to source a genetic test, and we were using the genetic test of my previous company. And I had evolved so much through my learning with Dr. Christine Horton and writing the content for the educational content, that I really realized that genetic testing per se had really not evolved over the 15 years that I'd been working at it. And so I had to kind of make this decision of like, step in or step out. Really step in and try fix all the things that I was unhappy about, which I think we're going to talk about now, or just step out and say, you know what, I've done my 15 years. And so 3x4 really is the decision that came out of, I know what the problems are in the industry, and this time I'm really, really going to step in and try to fix them. And I think, Alex, that's a perfect segue into our first couple of slides.
Absolutely, yeah. And I just so the audience knows, I actually asked Yael this morning to include the slides that are coming up here because they're so impactful in framing the problem when it comes to genetic testing, which is this enormous knowledge gap that practitioners tend to have, because most of us don't get this training in our foundational schooling.
That's right.
When you were going through med school, or even if we do additional continuing education after the fact, the opportunities to learn about this are very, very rare or slim. So take it away, Yael. Let's talk about what that is and what makes 3x4 different.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing the slides that I actually want, but Hala, no, I think that the slides that Alex and I actually want didn't make it into the deck, unless they're before then. Oh no, Hala, go backwards. I don't think you, no, not serious. I can deal with this. Let me tell you what I found before we carry, Hala, you can just go back to what makes 3x4 different. And I'll tell you what the slides were that Alex and I were so excited about. So what we did was in 2019, we attended the American College of Nutrition conference in San Diego. And I took a team with, and we did a survey on all the practitioners at FACN, understanding that the practitioners that attend American College of Nutrition are already functional, integrative, advanced, sophisticated. They're already thinking, my undergraduate training wasn't enough, I really need to push forward. And we did a survey saying, what is your experience of nutrigenomics? What are you looking for? What are the problems? And we found the most amazing results, that like 61% of the practitioners felt they didn't have the content knowledge to be able to work with genetic tests. And I might get some of my percentages wrong here because I don't have the slides in front of me, but essentially about 60% of them felt they didn't have the confidence to be able to work with genetic testing in their clinical practice. Most of them didn't have a community. I think it was 79%, something ridiculous like that, did not have a community to turn to who made them feel safe in having a place to ask questions. But the answer that I always remember, and this one I don't need a slide for, that really, really devastated me, was 74% of practitioners did not know which genetic testing company to trust. And for me, this was so indicative of the failure of the genetic testing industry. that in 2019, the most educated practitioners in our environment did not know how to choose a company they would feel safe with and they could trust. For me, this gave a complete fail to all the work that I'd been doing over the 19 years and all my colleagues and all the companies around me. And this was my impetus, my real impetus to start a new company, 3x4 Genetics, and to be able to say, what can we do different? How can I build a company that is so fundamentally different that the next time we run a survey and we say, how many of you found a company that you can trust, we wouldn't have this insane number of 74%. So that, I hope, covers the sides we wanted to. And that leads us into this kind of question of, you know, did I build something different? And obviously what makes us different?
Absolutely. And you got the numbers right. I was just checking here on my other screen. Good memory.
Thanks, Alex.
Yes, the reason why, yeah. Again, you can see why it's impactful to highlight these, because the gap is so big for most of these practitioners, and we're not offered many opportunities to learn about this. You'll talk more in a second here, but the beauty that we saw immediately just in seeing that initial report was that it was far more educational and far more thorough than anything else that you would get out there at that time, especially, but now it's just mushroomed into much, much more. So explain further what makes 3x4 different.
Okay, fantastic. All right, Hala, let's go to the next slide now. So what makes 3x4 different? Let's go to the 4 pillars. So one thing I realized 4 or 5 years ago was that I knew that there was something fundamentally wrong in the way genetic tests were being built, and I'm going to address that in a minute, that the science had not lived up to the potential or the expectation or the value that practitioners and your clients were looking for. So we're going to deal with the science in a minute. But I also realized that just fixing the science was enough. It just wasn't enough. We also had to think about how you as a practitioner engaged with a genetic testing report and how your clients, your patients, felt when they saw the genetic report, when they engaged with it. Because ultimately, if something doesn't inspire change in your clients, then we have not served you. So I'm going to come back to that. But I realized that just building a better test and a better report was not going to be enough to fix things, that we needed to rebuild the entire ecosystem of nutrigenomics from the ground up. So we didn't just address the science in the report. We looked at what are the other things that will enable you as a practitioner to really become as comfortable and confident as you need to be able to integrate genetics into your practice. The second thing was education. The third one was mentorship. I'm going to speak to all of these. And the fourth one was community. So Hala, let's move on and get stuck into what did we do differently in the report. So the first issue that I had, and this really was an epiphany for me about 4 or 5 years ago, was this idea of single SNPs. And I'm sure all of you listening are aware that when you look at a genetic test, you'll see a SNP and a recommendation. Either a SNP and a supplement recommendation, or a diet, or a lifestyle, or an exercise recommendation. But the reality is that these gene variations that we're testing for by themselves are not that powerful. They don't cause disease, they're not diagnostic, they're not risk genes. They change something in our physiology or our biochemistry, but by themselves, they're not powerful enough to generate a recommendation. So the first thing I did was build a new methodology that was actually based on our old methodology, which was polygenic risk scores, highly validated in the literature. But the problem was that the way that polygenic risk scores have been built, where you group together a whole bunch of genes that are working together, is it was usually associated with disease, diabetes, heart disease, hypertension. But we believe in a completely different approach, right? Systems biology, functional nutrition, functional medicine, integrative. And we're like, that's not enough. We want to see the biochemistry. So what I did was I took the concept and the methodology of polygenic risk scores and applied it to metabolic or biochemical pathways. So the foundation of the 3x4 genetic test is 36 pathways, and every pathway is a polygenic risk score. And we'll show you an image now. Hala, if you can go on, of what that looks like. So our next slide. So in your 3x4 genetic report, you will see this page, which has 36 pathways, and you will notice divided by 6 categories. And because we built it on a systems biology, functional medicine kind of philosophy, we always start upstream, cellular being the most important place to start, detox, inflammation, oxidative stress methylation. Then we look at all the systems, cardiovascular systems. We love to talk about energy. How do we consume calories? What drives us to eat? How do we experience calories? How do we burn up calories? We love talking about activity and sport and physical activity and what is our potential. And lastly, of course, we're a nutrigenetics company, so we talk about nutrients. Every single pathway you see here is about a polygenic risk score, a grouping of SNPs that drive it. But it goes further, so we can probably go to the next slide and introduce you to Darwin. Right, so who is Darwin? So it wasn't enough that we built these polygenic risk scores and made them into pathways. We needed to make the most important decision that a genetic testing company has to make. How do I decide what is a good gene or good gene variant, good SNP, to include in a genetic test? Because right now in the marketplace, I can test 800,000 gene variants. How do I figure out of the 800,000, which are the ones that are going to be useful to you as a practitioner to use with your patients? So we built an amazing patented methodology called Darwin, and we call it Darwin because only the fittest genes survive. And Helen, you can actually go to the next slide, because the important thing about Darwin is it's built on 2 concepts, scientific validity and clinical utility. Simply means scientific validity says, is the science good enough? Will this gene variant change something in our biochemistry, something in our physiology that will impact our phenotype? And is there enough good studies, good journals, good stats? You know the whole story. But the second concept is even more important, clinical utility. Will this information, this genetic information, be clinically useful to me as a practitioner working with my patient? So many genetic testing companies that you've engaged with have probably done great work in looking at the scientific literature, in establishing if the gene exists in the literature. But the thing where we find the greatest weakness is clinical utility. And if we go to the next slide, I'm going to sum it up in one slide. We actually have 8 criteria that we score in Darwin to determine if a gene variant is good enough scientifically and clinically to be included in our results. But the single slide that for me sums up everything is this one, which says, will this piece of genetic information help me as a practitioner make a different clinical decision that I would have made if I didn't know this about my patient? Does this genetic SNP contribute to your treatment plan, your decision making? Because if it doesn't, we are selling data. And it doesn't matter what the price of the genetic test is. It doesn't matter if it's $10.99. Then you're selling data and not clinical value. And the thing we have to fix in the nutrigenomics marketplace is clinical translational value. Okay, hey, let's go to the next slide. So that speaks to the science, but we didn't just want to give great science. The problem in all the other companies I've been involved in is scientists built the products, including me. But what we didn't think about is how do you as a practitioner experience a report and how do you patients? So the first thing I did was build a partnership with a gamification company that focuses on behavioral change. And we built our report based on 2 concepts, the language of color, as you can see, and you'll see when you see the sample report, and infographics, visual learning, and storytelling. So that we talk about the following the purple. Purple is impact. Where is genetics impacting my patient? I can follow the purple, the color, and I can also look at it in imagery. And I think the next picture shows you some of the images. So we have 6 categories. Let's have a look at that, Hala. 6 categories in our genetic report. And for every category, you'll get an infographic, which is storytelling, which we'll teach you, don't worry. We will teach you what the story is, but also the language of color. And the most important thing to know here is every image changes for every patient. So depending on the genetic results of your patient, the picture will change. So every genetic report you get for your patient will look different from another one. Let's move on to the next slide. I want to make sure we've got time for questions. So I just want to clarify something. Nutrigenetics is when we look at genetic sequence and we gain insight into who your patient is and how they respond to the world around them, how they respond to the food they eat, the supplements they take, their exposures, their toxins. Nutrigenetics, the genetic test we're offering, is insight, but insight must drive action. If there isn't a recommendation, if there isn't something translational, if there isn't something you can do, then it's not enough. So a large part of the work we do at 3x4 is in helping you to understand how do we use nutrition, supplements to change gene expression, to switch on or switch off genes. Let's move to the next slide. So what we've built for every practitioner that joins our network is a clinical guide. I call it the Google of nutrigenomics, because pretty much what you need to learn about nutrigenomics, we're going to help you. It's completely searchable. You're going to get everything you need to know about 140, every SNP, 148 of them. You type in the name of the SNP, it's going to tell you about the risk allele, references, background, impact, intervention. You're going to understand about supplements, diet interventions, lifestyle interventions, and supplement interventions, which we're going to talk about just now in why did we call the company 3x4. We're going to talk about functional test pairing. If you put in a gene or a pathway, polygenic risk score, we're going to tell you which functional tests we think are best suited to be able to investigate that better. So it is the Google of nutrigenomics, and every practitioner will have access to it who joins our network and our community. Next slide.
Yael, if I may interject.
Yeah, stop me.
How would someone join your community?
So we have two different ways of joining us, and I'm going to come to the end. So we're going to give you a link at the end, and in fact, I'll just ask Simon to pop that link in now, where you can literally sign up for our network, our group, very quickly. And more importantly, I'm going to talk at the end about our community, because what we realized when we looked at those percentages in the beginning, Alex, is that it's not just about the test, it's about education, mentorship, and community. So we have built the most extraordinary platform, which I'm going to show you. And we're also going to give you a link on how to join that platform, where you're going to find everything that I'm going to talk about in the next 3 slides. So 2 links, how to join our network, which Simon's going to post in the chat, and then how to join our community platform. And you'll be able to get between the 2 as well, so don't worry about it. But why is it so important? Because to be an expert nutrigenomics practitioner, or even to dip your toe into the field of nutrigenomics and not be an expert, and just start learning with us, joining us, kind of coming on the journey. I said we're all pioneers. You need to have 3 things. Formal education, as in coursework, which we have a load for you. We have a 90-minute introductory one. We have a Foundations in Nutrigenomics program, and we're constantly learning, and that's just the formal education. But we also have multiple webinars that you'll find in our community platform that we teach in multiple different ways. So we have multiple touch points. You want to learn in a 5-minute video, you learn in a 5-minute video. You want to come to a 1-hour session, group mentorship. So go to our next slide in mentorship, because this is one of the key differences between us and other companies. We don't just teach educational content, we handhold. So the moment that you join us and you'd order that first genetic test, you have the opportunity to tap into one of the most powerful mentorship. We work on a one-on-one basis, so you're going to get a one-on-one session with one of our world-renowned mentors, and I really say that, they're even better than I am. We have group mentorship, where we now offer groups of 5 practitioners where you bring case studies in, you bring your patient case studies, and our mentors take you through all, and you can already sign up for that as soon as you have your first patient. We have something called the Power Half Hour. Every single week you can send us questions. We will deal with your questions. Plus, of course, we've got historical stuff that you can go in and constantly learn. And Gene Team, one of my favorite, is what we call the clinical deep dive. Every month, we deep dive and we get the best experts. We had Carrie Jones talking about hormones and genetics, and she actually did a case study with the Dutch test and the 3x4 genetic test that was fantastic. So we have some great partnerships that we really deep dive, whether it's hormones, histamine, insulin, thyroid. And lastly, community. So this brings us to our community conversation. Next slide. We're almost done with slides, and then we can chat. So quite recently, we realized that we had amazing educational content, an extraordinary amount of mentorship going on, and we had this community platform actually, which was on Facebook and WhatsApp, and we wanted practitioners to really be able to access it on one platform without having Facebook sending them ads or sharing their data. So we launched 2 weeks ago our 3x4 community platform. And the great thing about it is it's not just on your computer, it's on your iPad. And most importantly, we actually have our own app. If you go 3x4 community in the App Store or a Google Store, you're going to be able to download the app. And you're going to get access to all the clinical information I've spoken about, all our educational material, all our mentors, mentorship, group mentorship, as well as the most extraordinary community based in the US and South Africa. But in fact, the community platform is open to anyone in the world. Whereas selling the genetic test is only available in the US and South Africa, the app is available. If you just want to come hang with us and learn about this amazing field, you'll see by joining the community, and we'll give you a link in a minute, how easy it is to start this journey. I think we have maybe one more slide. Do we have one more slide, Hala? And then I'm hopefully Alex is going to ask me some tough questions. Okay, back to you, Alex.
We'll pause for a second. I think we're coming up on the point where we were going to transition into this anyways, but I wanted to highlight something quickly that just occurred to me, Yael. You know, in terms of differentiating 3x4 from other genetic testing companies, you're also now transitioning to becoming more of a tech company, a technology company as well, and connecting the dots between everything. So you've incorporated the behavioral change and the design aspects into the report, which allows for better, more clear interpretation. But by developing your own platform like this and allowing people to congregate on one platform, you're now offering a unique tech experience that you wouldn't get with other companies like this. So I have to now vouch for you as well, or vouch or give you a testimonial here to say that online community experience which you just launched is truly phenomenal. Truly, I'm not just saying that for the sake of this webinar, but the experience is smooth, it's clean, it's very easy to consume content, to engage with others. So you've done an outstanding job with that. And just again to highlight the uniqueness of working with a company like 3x4. Once you use the test with your patient, it doesn't end there. There's so much more that happens after the fact. There's the interpretation, there's the coaching, there's the guidance, and then you as a practitioner get all of that on an ongoing basis as well, which is really exciting.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate that. And of course, there's supplements, right?
Of course,
so should we
exactly.
Should we talk about that?
Let's talk about that. Yeah, I just want to make sure we stay on time here because there's a number of questions that have come in that we'll get to in a moment.
Okay.
And then I have some other interpretation questions that I think we'll touch on if we have time as well. But on the point of supplements, I think it's important to explain why supplements are so important within the context of nutrigenomics or genetic testing, and how the 3x4 report allows we as practitioners to work with our patients to personalize treatment plans more accurately. Can you explain that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it speaks to why this partnership between Fullscript and 3x4 Genetics was so important. So we're not a supplement company. You will find many genetic testing companies or supplement companies. We're not that. But we believe, so why 3x4? We believe that genetic testing is used as a screening tool to be able to make the most personalized and educated decisions for your patient to minimize trial and error and make best choices. And it's based on a couple of things. One is focus on the areas that your patient needs the most attention on, where the most dysfunction is. Choose the most important diet changes so that you can get that 80-20 rule. You know, you're going to change 20%, but you're going to get an 80% impact. But then there's two other areas. I've mentioned the one, which is precision functional testing. Know which functional test to use so that you don't waste your patient's money. But the last one we call targeted supplementation. So what we believe is we want to make sure that when we work with the patient, we're choosing the supplements that are going to have the greatest impact. And to do that, we need to understand which are the biochemical processes that need to be most impacted, most upregulated, and which are the best supplements to do that. So this is why we were so excited about Fullscript, because Fullscript goes and does all the work on aggregating the best practitioner-based supplements in the industry, provides you with an extraordinary user experience, which is very much our ethos. And what we were able to do was link where we left off with 3x4 Genetics, which is making a recommendation for your patient on which supplements would be the most targeted. Fullscript takes over and says, and what we actually did was our clinical team worked with Fullscript's clinical team and said, if we have a recommendation for the detox pathway, this is what 3x4 recommend. And then Fullscript said, these would be the top 5 supplements that would absolutely address what you're trying to achieve. Because one of the problems we have at 3x4 is that we want to make sure that the patient has the full user experience, from understanding your genetics through to when I wake up in the morning, what are the supplements I'm going to take? What are the breakfasts I'm going to eat? So Fullscript for us, and having targeted supplement recommendations as opposed to a single brand or a mixture of supplements, was the absolutely ideal solution, because what you want to be doing as a practitioner is making sure that you're making the best targeted supplement recommendations for your patient, which requires the insight of genetics and the opportunity of Fullscript. And I think that's why it's been such a fantastic partnership.
Absolutely. Yeah, you just painted that picture perfectly. And the idea that we wanted to create was as seamless of an experience as possible, to make it very easy to track multiple results for your patients within the 3x4 portal, and then work with Fullscript directly within that portal, so you don't necessarily have to be bouncing around different windows. So on that note, why don't we have Hala now do a walkthrough of the experience, and then we'll come back for some Q&A.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And the special, don't remember, we have an amazing special for your practitioners, so we mustn't forget that
as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I have the slides for that as well. So I am just going to go ahead and log in here. I'm hoping everyone can still see my screen. Awesome. Let me try this from the beginning. So what I am showing right now is actually a login screen. I'm just going to stop my screen share for ever so slightly and re-log into the platform. And what I'm attempting to do, which hopefully will be good to go, is actually logging into the provider or practitioner portal on the 3x4 Genetics side. So that's the first kind of one of the questions that we got is, in terms of workflow, where do I start? And the answer is you start in your 3x4 Genetics platform directly. You don't need to log into Fullscript. And that's what I'm showing right here. So I've just went ahead and logged into the portal that Yael and her team set up for me. Now, to activate the Fullscript integration, so before you start recommending supplements through Fullscript within this platform, you do need to activate that integration. It's very easy. You go into the partners side here, and you'll have a widget for Fullscript that will allow you to authorize your Fullscript account. So you do need a Fullscript account, obviously, to recommend supplements through Fullscript. Go ahead and log into my account with Fullscript. Gonna go ahead and sign in. Whoopsie. There you go. Come on, do the things. It's always the case with
live demos.
With live demos, isn't it? And there you go. Uh-oh. There it is. I'm just gonna paste it again. I'm just gonna do this. Okay, I'm just gonna find my, oh, there it is. I know why.
Use my account.
Cool. So you log in, and of course, with everyone in 2021, we have tons of passwords, tons of accounts. Of course, if you have any trouble logging in, feel free to connect with our support teams. They'll always be able to help you out. But this is the screen that you'll want to see and actually click on authorize your application. right? So what this is doing is actually building that connection between those two platforms. And the first step or the second step is if you do have multiple accounts on Fullscript, because on Fullscript you can add your other providers, it will then ask you to select exactly who you are. So I'm just going to go ahead and authorize myself. And the success screen is this authorized screen, which allows you to note that, okay, these two accounts are now integrated. And the beauty of this goes into what happens when you are reviewing a patient list. So I'm going to go into one of our test patients here. Say this is one of your patients, you've ordered a test for them, they went ahead and completed it, and then the results came back and were delivered, and now you're ready to review the report. So everything that Yael was mentioning, the report, the entire results, so on and so forth. And there's the section for supplementation there. And whenever you're ready to recommend supplements for your patient, in this case test, all you'll need to do is find the Fullscript widget in your patient record and click on Make Recommendation with Fullscript. And what this will load up is the Fullscript kind of embeddable component. Go ahead and select yourself. This only happens if you are your Fullscript account owner. The patient is automatically added. So this is one of the huge benefits of the integration. You're not having to log into Fullscript separately, find your patient or add your patient again, and then find the recommendation, put together the recommendation. It's all built into this account with 3x4. And this might be familiar to a lot of our attendees here. This is the Fullscript recommendation tool. If not familiar, this is what allows you to hand select specific products from the Fullscript product catalog, and it allows you to build in this one-to-one recommendation for your patient, in this case, test. I'm going to go ahead and add my products. So these, this is my Fullscript account, so it has my frequently recommended products. But as I was saying, for the new users or the new signups that are looking for these 3x4 genetics pathway recommendations, you can go into your favorites and you will find them built in into your favorites right here. Of course, this is my account, so it has some other favorites, but this is where you'll go ahead and find these products that have been hand selected and curated from our medical advisory teams. Otherwise, you can go ahead and search. The catalog allows you to search for ingredients. So then, whatever you're looking through in your 3x4 report for the patient, if there is a recommendation for a specific ingredient, you're able to search for that. And on Fullscript, you're able to kind of categorize the dosing and be ready to go ahead and add the product into the recommendation. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of add a couple of other things here just to complete that recommendation. All our products have the built-in supplier suggested dosing instructions, which you can go ahead and change should you choose to or need to for the patient. But when this is good to go, including editing the savings. So of course, with Fullscript, there's a margin for the providers, and you can give savings for that. And once you're ready, you can go ahead and send that recommendation. The success screen tells you that this is good to go. You can go ahead and close it, and an auto refresh will happen on your 3x4 genetics account, which will then pull in that recommendation, and it actually pulls in the entire patient history. So we've activated this integration, and after writing the first recommendation, it actually pulls in all the history for that patient, which is great. So you no longer need to log into Fullscript separately to kind of find that information and then remind yourself, okay, what was it that my patient was recommended? And that's pretty much the Fullscript integration with 3x4 genetics. We've meant for it to be very simple, very useful, and a way to streamline your workflow so that you're not having to duplicate your efforts with your patients and use multiple platforms.
Thanks, Hala.
Absolutely.
Hala, could I ask you or Yael to clarify something? So we just spoke about the fact that the two teams collaborated on the best recommended nutrients and products associated to that. How would a user be exposed to what those recommendations are?
I can take on where they live in Fullscript, and Yael, maybe you can take on the education content from 3x4 to kind of put these together.
I think it's more the question is where it should be in favorites, right? You should be, when you click on favorites, you should see detoxification and then the recommendations for it, oxidative stress. So whatever the pathway is in the 3x4 genetic report. Exactly. So I'm not sure where you will find all our pathways there, and you will click on the pathway and it'll give you all the recommend. I'm not sure. Hala's got a whole lot of different stuff there.
Yeah. So my demo account is separate, is different, but that's exactly where they would be. Exactly.
Okay. So go to favorites and you will see the drop down. If you're in our website, in our portal, and you're accessing a Fullscript from our portal, go to favorites. It'll have all our pathways. Click on the pathway and it'll tell you all the recommendations that the teams have come up with.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah, Yael, that's exactly it, Alex. So yeah, so the demo account is an old account that I've had for years, but for all our new users signing up for Fullscript, it's all going to be built into those favorites. Exactly.
Okay.
I'd like to know what's in the sweet potato category, but we can talk about
that. Me too. I also noticed the sweet potato.
That's again my demo.
just to connect the dots there for people who are listening, the recommendations you would interpret through the report, and then you would open the Fullscript window. In there, you would click into the favorites, and based on what the individual recommendations are in the report, you would then, within the favorites, go to those appropriate categories. In those categories are the top 5 recommended products that we collaborated on, and then you can select from those products what you would use in building a recommendation for your patient. So it's meant to be very easy, no jumping back and forth. You can do everything exactly. Yeah,
absolutely.
All in one place. Absolutely.
Perfect. I have a few questions here that have come in relative to the integration. So maybe I'll just pose those, and then we can go to back to a broader Q&A. A number of people have asked, if I have an existing Fullscript account, how does that work? I think you addressed this, but maybe just clarify again. Where do you go to activate the integration?
Yeah, and maybe I'll also address, if you have an existing Fullscript account, how do you access these favorites? Maybe we'll take that more offline and connect with you directly to build in those favorites on your account directly, given that this is the opportunity to edit or create categories that are built in is only for new users. But to kind of go back to my my demo here, so if you do have an existing Fullscript account and a 3x4 genetics account, all you'll need to do is log into your 3x4 genetics account and find the Fullscript widget to authorize.
If you don't have a 3x4 account, we're going to give you a link to sign up in a minute, in the next slide.
Exactly, absolutely. I think Simon went ahead and added them in the chat section. There is a unique landing page that our teams collaborated on that has basically all the links, right? So this link here, which also has been added, has the link to sign up for Fullscript if you don't have one, and the link to sign up for 3x4 genetics if you don't have one. And all of these have the kind of built-in either categories for the Fullscript or the deal with 3x4 genetics, which I wanted to highlight in this slide. Yeah.
Do we want to answer more questions?
Go over that webinar kind of offer?
Sure, absolutely. Let's make sure we don't run out of time before we talk about this. So what we've done is, we're a big fan of the best way to experience genetics is to experience genetics. And we will support you with our mentorship team and our education team and our community, but we want you to jump in. So to be able to do that, so Hala showed you how you can easily set up a 3x4 genetics account, authorize your Fullscript account. We're offering a special where you get the first 3 tests that you sell for only $179. So our normal price is $299, That's if you as a practitioner order it and pay for it on behalf of your patient. If the patient pays for it, it's different, it's $349. But we're offering 3 at $179. That's $120 off the first 3 tests. Plus what we're giving you is an hour of mentorship. So when you get back your first report, you will get set up with one of our expert mentors who will take you through the report, show you the different pages, discuss your patient with you, and prepare you. And there is more mentorship in the community section, but you will get a one-on-one included with these first 3 tests to make sure that you are ready to work with the patient. So it's extremely low price. And of course, you can use one of them for yourself. Please feel free to try it at $179. It's an amazing price. It's only valid until 20th of November. Sorry, Alex, yes?
No, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to add, you said, the only way to experience genetics is to test yourself. But I would even add to that, even if you've done genetic testing before, some of the baseline versions that exist, like 23andMe, this is a completely different experience. So I highly suggest going through this. We've done it here at our team. It's a wonderful experience to have the interpretation done with Yael and her team. And it's completely unique to what you've likely experienced before. So absolutely recommend it.
Yeah, thanks for that. So if you think you've done genetics before, if you think you've done a genetic test, this pathway-based analysis, Darwin, Keller, user imagery, but not just that, the whole experience of mentorship, education, it really is hopefully what we're trying to achieve, a completely different genetics experience. Thanks, Alex. So just to note that it is only available until the 20th of November. So please, if you're going to use your $120 off each test, you're going to have to use it fairly quickly. And as I said, the best way to experience genetics is to do it in an environment where you are supported, and we will be there to support you.
Exactly.
And then the next slide, I think, is, and of course, there is the link, which I think is fullscript.com. I think that's already in your chat. And the last one is come and join our community. Come and join our community. The link is my.3x4genetics.com. We have 2 different levels. We have an open access, a professional level where you can just come and explore, hang out with us, see the kind of stuff. There is loads of content for you to learn. We do have another level, which you'll see if you really want, we call it elite access, to deep dive into mentorship, to deep dive into learning, amazing discounts on learning. But there is no barrier to just coming and joining this education, mentorship, and community platform. Download the app and come join us there. Introduce yourself and come hang out with us.
And just to clarify again, there's no cost to join the community in general. There's a cost if you want to go into more extensive training, as you mentioned, right?
Extensive training, extensive mentorship, extensive education, which are all discounted. So absolutely. But there's a huge amount on offer. There's also a 30-day trial on the Elite Access if you want to just come and see what everyone else is doing. There's a 30-day trial. You can stop it at any time. You can cancel at any time. But if you just want to come see what I've been talking about, this kind of amazing community that we've been building for the last couple of years, there is no cost, and there's absolutely no cost to join our network to be able to sell our genetic test. No cost to that as well.
And no ads.
No, no.
Not like
That's
Facebook.
That good. Yeah.
So
no ads, no one watching your data. Yeah.
No, exactly. There was a question here. You mentioned the answer to this earlier, but I just want to clarify again. The genetic test through 3x4 is only available in the US and South Africa for order, but the platform, the community, is available anywhere. So if you're in Canada,
worldwide,
for instance, where this person was asking, you can access it. If you're anywhere, you can access it.
Yeah. So the community platform is available worldwide, and we have practitioners from all over the world. But to be able to actually work with us and sell the test to your patients at the moment is only available in the USA, sadly not Canada yet, and South Africa.
And for anyone who's in Canada asking, I'm pestering them right now to try to get to Canada as well. So
we're trying to find a solution.
Soon.
Absolutely. We're doing our best to find a solution.
All right, let's take a few minutes here at the end and answer some of the.
Yeah, we have a ton of questions coming in. I just found one that I'll go through very quickly because it's more on the demo side of things, which is just how to edit the Fullscript savings for the patients within the integration. So I'm just going to quickly do that, and then I'll give it back to our experts for a lot of the questions that are way above my, I'm just, woof, I have no idea. But this one I can address very easily. So a question on how to edit these savings. So anytime you're actually within that Fullscript window in 3x4, you can just go ahead and click on this little pencil sign, which allows you to edit the savings. So I'm just going to go into apply additional savings, and I can go ahead and edit them. Now, my specific account already has built-in 20% store savings. So any dispensary-wide discounts, you'll need to log into Fullscript directly to edit that. But the additional savings are applied on your to the specific patient at the time that you're adding the recommendation. So that's where you could go ahead and do that. And I will have Alex take away some of the other questions that are coming in. Let me know if you want me to also read them out.
Perfect. Thanks, Hala. Okay, the first one here that I found is actually, I think, a really good one for you to touch on, Yael, because as you well know, there's what feels like an infinite number of specialty tests that practitioners can do nowadays. So Christine asks, what type of patient would you choose to do the 3x4 genetic testing as a first-line functional or specialty test when there are so many tests to choose from? How would you answer that?
That's a great question. So we have an approach that we've worked quite hard on called the genes first approach. Acknowledging that there are outstanding functional tests in the marketplace, the problem is which ones to do and which ones to do first. And they are quite pricey, they're often invasive. So we believe quite strongly, actually, that we use the genetic test as a screening tool to be able to help you make a decision on which are the best functional tests to then follow on with. So they basically take a whole story that's happening to your patient and identify where the potential greatest dysfunction is for your patient molecularly, and therefore what is recommended. And in fact, in our clinical guide, remember the kind of Google of nutrigenomics, we give recommendations of what are the functional tests that we would recommend. And in fact, in a week's time or in 2 weeks' time, we're doing an entire gene team, remember the clinical deep dive, just on genetics and functional testing. We're going to have Dr. Wayne Sedano. We're going to have some other experts who are going to be joining us, where we talk, how do we link genetic testing to functional testing and what is the relationship? And I think that's coming up very, very soon. Maybe Simon can pop it into pop a link in, but that speaks to that question, is what is that relationship and how do we use the two so we can minimize the cost for our patients and reduce that kind of trial and error, which has both a kind of a emotional cost to it, but also economic cost to it.
I just want to clarify, you said with the Wayne Saldano webinar that you're going to be talking about how 3x4 genetic testing can be used with functional testing, but is it also not addressing quote unquote conventional testing, your standard blood testing and such as well?
Yes, sorry. So I'm saying functional testing just because I really like that term, but it's all testing. So it's blood, it's your basic blood, it's Quest, it's LabCorp, it's your basic testing. It's all testing really. How does genetic testing inform what you should be testing is a better way to say it than functional testing. And then of course you get your basic testing, and then of course, and we will be covering all of the testing. And in fact, in our clinical guide, we don't only have the Dutch and all of those, but we have, we're testing for magnesium, we're testing for B12, like what is the best test, and also what is the range that we should be looking at. So all of that is included in our clinical guide.
Fantastic. This is maybe a good segue to ask, how does the 3x4 testing and the experience take into account environmental factors? Now, obviously you have polygenic risks built in, or polygenic pathways, which is a unique offering in this kind of interpretation. But when it comes to epigenetics and epigenetic markers and the changes and the impact of the environment, or even say chronological age on a person's genes, how does one take this kind of interpretation and then use that clinically?
Yeah. So we work with this equation, we call it the G plus E or G plus delta E. So genetics plus a change in epigenetics will drive health equals H. And why are we not a direct-to-consumer company? Why are we not a DTC company? Because we need you as a practitioner to be able to help your patients manage that delta E, because epigenetics is really choice. What are the choices you're making every single minute of every single day, 24/7? The coffee you're choosing, the place that you live, the house that you live in, the mold you're exposed to, the countries you travel to, the trauma, the stress, that's epigenetics. So we can't measure that in a genetic test, but you as a practitioner can not only assess that in your patient, but try and change it. So what we're trying to put together is this equation. Genetics plus changes in our choices will drive health. And that's why there's always a partnership with practitioners for us. That's why we're not 23andMe. We're not trying to just give genetic data, because genetics by itself does not define an answer. It's not an absolute. Genetics is a beautiful layer of insightful information that you as a practitioner will add in to everything else you do with your patient, enabling you to make a better, more precise, targeted, personalized decision, but not genetics by itself. And that's why we love working with practitioners like yourselves, is because you're making that choice which will drive epigenetic change. You're helping your patients make those choices.
Perfect. Wonderful answer. Okay, from a more of a pragmatic perspective, what does this test contain? How should the what's the expected experience essentially? Like, what's the size? How is it shipped? And can you explain maybe the justification for getting this type of test? Is there any difference, I should say, between this type of test and the basic type of kit that you would get from 23andMe?
So it's the same thing. I mean, it's a cheek swab, right? So you get a kit that's delivered, you have shipped to your patient. It's a cheek swab. You rub them inside of your cheek for 60 seconds. It's that simple. Get shipped to our lab, which is in Atlanta. You've got about a 3 to 4 week turnaround time, hopefully 3 weeks, where you'll be notified at every single point in that beautiful portal, which Hala showed you, of where the kit is. It's been shipped, it's at the lab, it's been processed, your report is ready. You get to download the report. Your patient does not get the report. You're the practitioner in charge. You download the report. You make and you'll make an appointment with your patient. Of course, you've got all the opportunities around mentorship and education. There are 148 gene variants in our test. There are 36 pathways. Remember, a pathway is a polygenic risk score. And there are 6 categories. So we always start cellular, systems, cardiovascular health. Just to note, there are many companies in the genetic space that will sell a DNA diet test, a DNA sport test, a DNA mind test, you get the idea. We don't believe that's how health works. And we know that because if you look at functional and systems biology, health does not work in isolation. So when I'm trying to help with weight management, and I'm only focusing on genes that drive calorie kind of absorption or adipogenesis or appetite, but I'm not considering detoxification or inflammation, which are upstream processes, I may very likely not be successful with my patient. So we have one product, one test, and you're getting everything: activity, weight management, systems, cardiovascular, glucose, insulin. We look at cognitive function, mood disorders, and most importantly, we look at your upstream processes, core cellular function, which is detox, and then nutrients, of course, nutrients, gluten, folate, B6, B12, histamine. Oh, fascinating what we learned about histamine. So it's one test with everything included so that you really get the insight that you need on your patient, because it's not, we say we don't know what we don't know. I hope that answered the question.
No, that's actually a much broader answer than I was looking for.
Well,
perfect. The beauty with this kit as well, just to really highlight the end-to-end experience that 3x4 has created, is it's this nice black tube that is cardboard as well, I believe, right? So it's biodegradable at the end of the day. That's a nice feature as well. And everything is in this nice little tube that's delivered to the patient. It looks modern, it feels modern, it has a very well-designed feel to it, which is the entire experience across the board when you're working with 3x4. So on that note,
it has a beautiful QR scan, right? Remember, you scan it on your phone. You don't have to type in anything. You don't have to write anything. It's just a scan, pops up on your phone.
Seamless, completely seamless. Yael, I could ask you questions for much longer, and there are many that have come in here. I'm going to say, and I'm going to repeat what Kaylee mentioned in the chat, that we're going to take all these questions and follow up with you. But
Wonderful.
being cognizant of the time and knowing that there's quite a time change from where I am and where you are, I'm going to say thank you very much. And we're going to leave it at that for now. And I'm sure we can have another webinar like this at some point and maybe get into the deeper details of genetic testing and give our audience a chance to ask more technical questions, because we didn't really get to that in this case. But just in the interest of time, I'll let you go and say thank you again. Thanks for everyone who joined us today. And we will be following up with resources, with answers to your questions, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's been a pleasure, and thank you, Fullscript. We're looking forward to a really exciting partnership. Thanks so much, everyone.
Take care.